My name is Donovan. I'm a recently retired building contractor who, upon retirement, began looking for a home-based, tax-deductible business that was fun and interesting and also offered a reasonable return. I discovered wire stripping on the internet. The videos were fine, but it looked to me like most of the people that I saw were engaged in some sort of a hobby. They were taking 2 and 3 foot strips of wire, fumbling around, running them through homemade devices, and then spending way too much time trying to separate the insulation from the copper wire. Even the expensive machines required a time-consuming effort. I decided then and there if I were going to do something like this, I would want to be able to do it as quickly as possible. As they say, time is money. It had to go from a hobby to a business. This is the wire I've removed from my machine, anywhere from 40 to 70 pounds. I call them nuggets because they remind me of nuggets of gold, and it's just as easy to liquidate. Take it down to my favorite recycling place and walk away with cash. Now that's fun. First things first, tools. As I've stated before, I'm a recently retired building contractor, and I built my prototypes out of scrap lumber, miscellaneous fittings from the local hardware store. This is something that anybody can do. The first tool I came up with is the stripper. What you see here is 125 feet per minute of stripping that insulation off of that cable, and it can go faster. Notice the old plywood. I think I'm in good company though, because if you remember, Steve Jobs and Wozniak built their first Apple computer with a plywood case. Then Jobs set out with that prototype to market it. Whatever happened to those two guys? Don't tell me, I think I know. The next tool I came up with is the twister. A good portion of the wire that's available out there for recycling will be twisted wire, and you're going to have to deal with it somehow. After the twister, I came up with my multi-spool reel, which will take up to 8 conductors off of one cable, separate them into different bins. Once it's out of the twister and onto those individual reels, it's a very easy run to put them through the stripper and into the nuggets and, of course, down to the recycler and get the cash. This is another situation. I had a spool of wire that was about 400 pounds and I had to deal with it. I came up with a tool that answers that problem. I've made about a half a dozen different tools to convert my inventory of scrap wire into reels of nuggets, and of course you know the rest. I put together a DVD entitled The Stripper. If you're interested, know how I made these tools and the materials I used and the internet purchases, this DVD will show you how not only to build it but also to operate it. The second DVD I came up with was the business. Actually, I'm describing my business, what I've experienced and what I've learned. Now, on the DVD that discusses my business is divided into 7 parts. First part is the paperwork. We discuss 5 different areas, but the 2 most important areas are acquiring a seller's permit from the state that you're in. And I go through this exercise so that with the intent that you don't have to put any money up. Usually people who want a seller's permit will have to put up a big cash deposit for the state to be comfortable about whether or not you're going to be paying your taxes. But you can get by that if you know the steps. The next is a vendor number or an account number from the recycler. This is great. You got to have certain things that they're looking for, but you get special treatment, and in some cases you even get better prices. The next chapter or part is the inventory acquisition. Recyclable wire is everywhere if you know where to go, who to see, and the relationships you need to cultivate. You will find wire behind businesses. They'll be found in spools, scrap piles, in dumpsters. They're in containers. Major corporations have them sitting out in their inventory yards just waiting for some department head to say, let's sell that and get rid of it. I've got 3 examples here. The first example is my pickup filled with purchases I got from 2 places. One, a heating and air conditioning place was going out of business, and then a heavy construction operator who was getting rid of some stuff out of his maintenance shed. The next one is Chevron. I bought this spool of wire. It weighed about 300 to 400 pounds. It had been underwater for months from Katrina, and they weren't going to take any chances with it, so they sold it, and I picked it up at a pretty good price. The third one is an oil rigging contractor who was getting rid of some partially empty spools of wire. Now, this isn't your normal spool, of course. This spool weighs 35,000 pounds. The cable is 2 inches in diameter, and there's 3,940 feet of that. We all know what a nuisance it is to be tripping over those spools when you go out to the yard every day to look for something. So they decided to get rid of it. Estimating. This is another chapter, and it's really, really important. With time, effort, and experience, I've been able to put together my copper wire spec sheet that I use regularly. The chart's very valuable. If you're looking at some wire and you read, for instance, that it's a 10 gauge wire, the chart will tell you the percentage of copper in that wire, and it'll also tell you how much copper per foot. And then you can do the numbers after that to determine the value of whatever you're looking at. For instance, somebody's got 3,000 feet of number 10 wire, approximately and very close what the value of that copper is in that wire. If you don't know the gauge, the chart will also tell you by checking the diameter. Look it up on the chart and it'll tell you what gauge it is, and then you can do the math from there also. Extremely valuable. It's approximate numbers, but they're very close. They're better than being ignorant, and I use it all the time. In this shot, you're watching me weigh a recently purchased bulk order of wire, and I do this frequently just to gain experience and knowledge. Helps me in the future and gives me more confidence. Now the next part we're dealing with is sales and marketing, and this is important. On the heating and air conditioning and contractor sale, I purchased that for about $150. Now when I spread it all out, I noticed there were some things that were odd. First of all, I bought this sight unseen, and I was a little upset when I brought it in because I had hydraulic hoses in there and stuff like that. But when I got to them and started doing research, worked out pretty good. In that lot, I got about 8 heavy-duty twist lock extension cords, which I sold for about $150. Also got high-quality jumper cables. For some reason, I haven't been able to sell those. They just end up in the back of my truck until I can, of course. There was also a pair of 75-foot welding leads, which I sold quickly for $165. The hydraulic hoses here, there's a 5800 PSI, I sold for $79. I also have this Clemco dual hose 50-foot, which I sold for $59 real easy. The balance of the hoses, the hydraulic hoses, I just bundled them all up and was able to sell them for $240. And then I still had about $450 of recycled wire in there. So all in all, in this particular lot, I bought it for about $150 and I sold it for about $1,100. That was pretty good. That was situation 1. Now situation 2, you see here, this is 2 pallets that's new wire on reels. They told us that they have 10,850 feet of 6 gauge wire, 3,000 feet of 10 gauge wire, and 44,000 feet of 14 gauge. Now this is great that you get this kind of information. I went to my spec sheet, and let's just take the 6 gauge alone. It's easy to discover that there was about over 1,800 pounds of copper in that. And that has a recycled value, scrap value of $6,040. On my DVD, we're talking about a quick retail value of $10,000 for just the 6 gauge, and that's a discounted price. The company sold this piece of inventory for about $3,220. But if you don't strip the wire, it's worth even more, and there's a retail value of a discounted, very quick sale retail value of about $10,000 just on the 6 gauge wire alone, not to mention the other 2. So a person at the right time, knowing what to expect, is going to come out of this really well. The third situation is the large spool. Now this is kind of freakish, but the details that we were given is that's a partial spool. It's a 2-inch cable made up of 1/0 conductors, 3,940 feet long, and that the spool weighed, the way it is right there, 35,000 pounds. Again, I ran to my spec sheet and I knew from doing the numbers that there was about 27,000 pounds of recyclable copper on there. 7,500 of that was going to be just steel, and that also is recyclable. So you had a combination recycled value in that spool of $88,000. The company sold that spool for $5,200. You do the math. This is no longer a hobby. And with the spec sheets, it makes these things pretty easy. Now, the other chapter I talk about, or part of this DVD, is negatives. I talk about things people don't talk about because you can get hurt and you can use a lot of money if you're not aware of some things. And I hope these will be a real signal to you to consider very carefully what you're doing if you do get into the business. The next part of the next chapter is positives, as I call it, very simply. We're dealing with the tax benefits of a home-based business, and they're tremendous. They're just unbelievable. I don't know how anybody doesn't do something to have a business out of their home just because of the tax benefits. The last one is extracurricular activity. Take a look at this picture here. You know there was an insurance company that insured that truck. There's also an insurance company that now owns that truck, and you have also an insurance company that wants to sell it. There are some real opportunities out there if you know where to look and who to see, and if you know what the pitfalls are. These are really good opportunities. Here's a picture of an old ratty trailer, and there's a bunch of them out there. They have value. You can determine quickly what the value is just by looking at the identification plate on the trailer, and you know a few other things which you'll learn off of the DVD. Here's another one. Since I'm a contractor, I'm familiar with it. This is a concrete vibrator. Opportunity came up and I bought it for $150. I turned right around and sold it for $375 in the same month. Required no selling, no advertising. All I had to do was put it in a box for $19 worth of postage, and it went out and the check's coming in. And those are great opportunities that you will run into out there if you're aware of them. There are a lot of other opportunities that show up also. The business DVD goes into these kinds of opportunities and what to do with them. Summarizing, the first DVD is the stripper. Basically, it tells you how to make the equipment that you've seen here and to do it cheaply. The second DVD is entitled The Business, and it offers extremely valuable information on operating this kind of a business. The two DVDs are about 2.5 hours total.